Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. The Eagles have made a trade. Michael Carter from Duke and a 7th-round pick to the Jets for John Mechie from Alabama, and a 2027 6th-round pick are heading to the Jets. What does it all mean? Let's bring in Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds, who joins us as this news just comes down. Michael Carter, a corner who has, signed to some pretty big money, has specialized mostly as a slot. But I think what most people liked about Michael Carter coming out of college at Duke was his versatility, his ability to play both. But what is the messaging here? You trade Mechie, not a big factor, obviously. You get Carter in return. Is this a guy that factors in your mind immediately on this defense?
I think he can. I think immediately is a vague question. I mean, I don't think they're going to come out on Wednesday or Thursday of next week when they start practice for their Monday night game, and all of a sudden Michael Carter is in the starting lineup. That it doesn't work that way. They have to see what they've got in him. Health is always a case with Michael Carter. He's battled some injuries. He's only played 4 games this year, so they have to first make sure that he's good to go and going to be fine. But Mike, the first thing I thought when I saw the trade report was that Michael Carter has played the slot quite a bit throughout his career with the Jets, maybe even with the Cardinals. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't seen too much Cardinals tape. But he's played the slot, and this is an opportunity, if the Eagles believe he can excel in the slot, then to move Cooper DeJean outside in not just base, but nickel, just a full-time outside cornerback for this year, not for the future, for this year. And that might be their best course of action, as opposed to trying to see what Ja'Cory Bennett's got, see if they can get Kelee Ringo to better, see if there's a corner on the trade market, which is very difficult to bring in a corner on the trade market without giving up a whole lot in return. This might be their best course of action for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you said he probably doesn't play maybe on Monday night against the Jets, against the Packers, but he's out there. But, a guy who got a pretty good deal, 3 years, $30 million at one point. You would think that the Eagles, and Joe Douglas drafted him. Joe Douglas is now here. I'm sure there's some intel of saying, hey, this is a guy that can come in and play for you pretty quickly. I thought it was interesting yesterday when or I guess it was Tuesday, which was yesterday, by the way. That 18-inning game really screwed me up, all right? So,
yes.
But when Vic Fangio was like, I got minuscule input on Howie Roseman making moves, the next day they get him a corner. So is this them saying, hey, we really got to go get something, and let's do it before, the trade deadline so we can get him in here during the bye week and get him up to speed?
Yeah, that's why you make the trade now. And by the way, let me hit the reverse button, and thank you for not embarrassing me publicly. I did it myself. Michael Carter did not play for the Cardinals this past year. I'm doing
that's the running back.
Once here. Yeah, that's the running back, and they both happen to be with the Jets at one point. But yeah, so this Michael Carter is coming over from the Jets as a cornerback. I'm now got my brains correct. And again, he played the slot there. So, and yes, the reason why you would want to bring him in is because you would now have some time. He can get familiar with the playbook throughout the bye week. It just gives you a little bit of a head start. Now, it's not like he's out there practicing because the team is probably away during the bye for at least a few days, but it certainly gives him the opportunity to get a head start on the playbook. And again, there's a lot of fact-finding that's got to come from the Eagles and from Michael Carter over the first few days he's with the team.
So, do you think the Eagles would be against moving Cooper DeJean? Now, he has played both base and nickel, so he's moved to the outside at times, but do you think that they like him playing in that nickel when called for, or would they be okay if they found someone they're comfortable with?
You mean okay with somebody else if they
exactly, like obviously there's not a guy that they feel more comfortable with that they keep moving him back there instead of just saying you're going to stay at this spot. But he's a big factor for them in the run game, playing that nickel slot. I know Vic doesn't like to call them slots, and he likes to call them
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah, no, I think that's the point I'm trying to make about the fact finding, Mike, because there's no question, and I'm already getting people, reaching out to me on Twitter of some of the things I said. There's no question that Vic likes Cooper DeJean in the slot, and he probably views him there long term in the slot too, because he's so impactful. But this isn't about long term. This is about right now and what's best for the defense. And they've gotten by over the last 2 weeks of playing Adoree Jackson or Kelly Ringo, right? And really, opponents haven't targeted him too much. I think that's because we're talking about Carson Wentz, who was very erratic, right, and injured, and then Jackson Dart. So then it's going to turn to Jordan Love and Jared Goff pretty soon here, and I don't think they're going to get away with it. So what they can do is see in practice how things go. Is Michael Carter good enough in the slot as a slot defender, as a run defender? Does he do the things that good slots can do, that it makes sense to move Cooper DeJean outside? Yes, you might weaken yourself a little bit in the slot, but you might improve yourself even more on the outside. And that's what Vic has to figure out and figure it out pretty soon. Because like I said, the gauntlet starts right over again with the Packers and the Lions. I have no idea if he'll be ready to play Carter in the slot at that point. But I do want to emphasize, because Vic said yesterday in his press conference that Cooper DeJean is too valuable in the slot. They've considered moving him outside, but he's just too valuable. But later in the conference, someone asked him about, well, what would it take or something of that line? He said, well, we would have to solve the slot issue. So even though Vic said that Cooper DeJean is too valuable in the slot to move him out, we have to acknowledge that he talked about the fact that they have considered it. They've already played him outside in base downs, and that what's the biggest impediment to moving him outside was the fact that they didn't have someone that they were comfortable with in the slot.
That's what I was asking before, is like, hey, we would move Cooper out there. We like him there, but if we found someone that could handle that role, the versatility that Cooper brings, he talked about it. He could play safety. He could play outside corner. He could play nickel. I just wonder if he values him so much more in this Swiss Army knife role, or would he prefer to just lock him in on the outside if he had someone that was serviceable? So far, they haven't had that guy, not even close.
Yeah, and that's why I'm very careful in my wording. Even when I'm on social media, I am saying this is a good solution for now, for the short term. It would not surprise me if next year, and we're far from that, but Cooper DeJean right back there in the slot, and they may have somebody, they may draft a corner in the first round who's outside or second round. So yeah. I think Vic was pretty clear, and I don't think Vic was being coy or trying to mislead people by saying how important Cooper DeJean is to this defense in the slot. And probably in the future, if they can upgrade the outside corner, he'll probably go back there.
What I think is important for the listeners to also come in on, and the people watching on YouTube, is Carter was drafted by Saleh and that regime. He fit the Saleh defense better than he's fitting the Glenn defense, and he's been banged up. But he's a guy who has been a tackler who can make those plays. And I figure Joe Douglas, who drafted him, said, hey, this might be the answer to some of our issues here. We can move Cooper out if we get a player like this.
Right. Of course, Joe Douglas is really the one who drafted him in the Jets. So
Correct.
Joe knows him better than anybody. And, there's a really long line of great tackling cornerbacks to come out of Duke University, Mike. I mean, we could spend all day talking about Michael Carter, if I'm making a joke there. But I don't know. I honestly think that, and we've seen this before with trades, where you get a talent and you try your best to see if it works, and if they don't see him as a great slot and they don't want to put Cooper DeJean outside for Michael Carter, it's okay, because there's not tons of financial ramifications to this, right? He had his extension with the Jets, so the money sort of gets drained to them. I saw a report where he's even waiving $5 million injury clause. And then, now if you might like him in your dime. If you want to keep Cooper in nickel, you might play more dime and just keep Ja'Cory Bennett. If that's the flavor of the week, Ja'Cory Bennett stays outside. It gives them, at very least, optionality and improvement in their secondary, because the guy's a good player, even if it doesn't wind up being that he's the slot and Cooper DeJean moves outside for the year.
Right, so obviously one of the questions at the trade deadline, edge rusher, corner. I don't know that this is the answer, but they went out and got a corner today. Michael Carter is the acquisition, and they also get a 7th-round pick from the Jets in exchange for John Mechie and a 2027 6th-round pick. The Mechie thing just never worked out. They got him in this trade, and you thought, hey, this is a guy who was a first-round pick, has a lot of talent. How can we use him? They designed one play for him, and he was terrible on kick returns.
Yeah. The Mechie fit, going back to when they got him, and Adam and I reported on it, good player, obviously had to battle cancer early in his career, but it never sort of made a ton of like they needed this guy, right? Because he's mostly a Z receiver, and you already had John Dotson, and you already had Devontae Smith. They were getting good rookie play from surprisingly good rookie play from Darius Cooper. And it just, they don't throw the ball to anybody other than Brown or Smith enough to, you would think, make it essential. And remember, they actually traded for him before Johnny Wilson got hurt. I think it was the day that he arrived is the day Johnny Wilson got hurt at training camp. So it wasn't like he was traded for to replace. It was just an opportunity to bring in a guy who had some talent. And let's say, this thing could be wind up the same thing. It doesn't cost them a whole lot. No. And if he doesn't make any impact, no big deal.
No, and listen, it doesn't cost them a lot. Mechie, a guy who they were not using at all, and you just basically flipped back-end draft picks here. So you didn't even have to, give up, a middle-round draft choice. You just gave up the player because the Jets are saying, all right, we need a wide receiver so badly, we'll take the shot with the guy who has some talent, and we'll give you a guy that really isn't fitting into what we're doing here.
Yeah. And in some sense, I think that you're going to see a lot of player-for-player trades more in the future because the trade market for really good players, especially at the deadline, it gets to be absurd, right? I mean, you see guys moving for pretty high picks. I mean, the Eagles once traded a 3rd-round pick for Golden Tate. And I know he caught that touchdown against the Bears, which was on a rub route that, you could have caught, Mike Gill. It was a schemed touchdown. It wasn't like he did anything all that special, and then he was gone off to the Giants the next year. And then you think, I give him a 3rd-round pick for that. They gave up a 4th-round pick for Jannard Avery. So at this point, it almost seems like the way the trade market is at the deadline, it's so inflated. It's better if you can just give up something low cost to get something low cost that you think has upside and can help you.
Yeah, well, and one thing, too, is everybody is assuming that Michael Carter, who's played almost 80% of his snaps from the slot, he has played outside corner as well. I guess the Eagles can try to give him a run there at practice, see how he fits in with the other guys. But this could be the first door opening to Cooper DeJean kind of moving more full-time to that outside corner spot. They might have seen enough through 8 games. All right, we just got to put our best guy there. What's more important, the outside corner or that nickel spot?
It depends on who you're facing. I honestly believe that. I mean, again, over the last 2 weeks, it's been more important to have a good nickel because nickels are supposed to be good tacklers. Cooper DeJean's great. He blitzed from the slot, which caused a sack when Dart stepped up and right into Jordan Davis. But when you're facing Jordan Love and you're facing Jared Goff, right, and you've got great outside weapons on both of those teams, if you feel like your slot can just handle the coverage and tackle well enough, then you don't want your Adoree Jackson or Jacorian Bennett or Keely Ringo exposed to guys like Matthew Golden or Dubs or Jameson Williams or whoever it is that's going to be out there, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who kind of moves around. Then it might be more important to you to be stronger on the outside.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com.
Hey, by the way, real quick, that's a great point that you're making. This doesn't have to be a permanent for this year, even move for Cooper DeJean. It could be now you have enough corners so you can be matchup based. They might find that, we like Michael Carter in the slot against teams X, Y, and Z, but when we face some other teams, we're going to go back to putting Cooper DeJean in the slot and live with either Bennett or Jackson or whoever, Ringo or Michael Carter outside. I definitely think that's a possibility.
So, what question was I just about to ask you before you rudely interrupted me? What is your thoughts on how this Dean Campbell thing shakes out here? Do we just get to a point where, look, John Campbell just is not going to get the snaps that he was getting?
Well, I always say that the coaches give you the answers to the test. That's something me and Adam talk about a lot, and that actions speak louder than words. And it's very glaring that I think Campbell played he played the fewest snaps that he's played all year by a lot.
Mm-hmm. He played like 20 snaps.
Yeah, 20 snaps, which was like 40% of the defense or something. After playing no fewer than, I think, 90% of the snaps in every single game. So was that matchup based? Was it a chance to get Nakobe Dean more reps against a bad team that they knew they were going to beat after the second quarter? It's very interesting that they didn't against the Vikings when they brought Nakobe in. They moved Jihad Campbell down in the 5-2 front, and then I think he played a few snaps at edge in nickel. But against the Giants, they didn't play him at edge in the nickel at all. And then you heard Vic say he kind of had a choppy week, which I don't think was smearing Jihad Campbell. I think it's very difficult in this defense when you haven't practiced it to play nickel end because it involves coverage. You saw Patrick Johnson had a struggle there with Cam Scadaboo, right? I mean, it's not just go get the quarterback, and all he has practiced since he got here is basically nickel off the ball linebacker and then sometimes base 5-2 defensive end to stop the run. So I can understand why Vic just didn't trust him as a natural 4-2 look, 4-2 nickel edge yet. But we'll see as that goes on. You'll have Brandon Graham coming back, Nolan Smith coming back. I can't imagine that Jihad's just going to suddenly just sit behind Nakobe Dean as well as he's
Dean
played.
played 63% of the snaps. By the way, Josh Uche played 60% of the snaps. So they obviously already value Uche as a pass rusher more than they do Campbell.
Vic said it.
Yep, and then you've got Graham and Nolan Smith coming back. So both of those guys coming back, Uche playing 31 snaps, Dean getting 33. And I would only imagine Dean's not going to go down, right? He'd probably go up.
We'll see. I don't know that, Mike. I think that's where the danger is in assuming what they did 1 week in a game that they were winning pretty considerably after, by halftime, third quarter, is going to stick for the rest of the year. I don't think that there's a reason to just take Jihad Campbell off the field. I think Nakobe's looked pretty good, but it's not like Jihad Campbell has looked bad, missed assignments, done anything wrong either. I mean, he was playing 90% of the snaps each game up until this last game. If he were not playing well, certainly Vic could have played like dime. He could have used Trotter. I mean, he could have done something if he didn't think Jihad was playing well.
And it's not that Dean's not playing well either. It's like he's playing well. You're not like, what are you doing? This guy was playing well, and Dean's playing well. So it's just like, hey, you don't lose your job because of injury unless you stink.
Well, usually you don't lose your job when you're a first-round pick and you're playing well, and that's why.
But that's the surprising part about this whole thing.
Well, and that's why I'm not committed to the fact that he's lost his job yet. We'll have to see what happens coming out of Green Bay. Again, that was a Giants team that they were starting to build a pretty good lead on. They had control of that game from the beginning, so it could have been just a very good opportunity to get Nakobe Dean out there, continue to get him reps, get him back in shape. So I don't want to read too much into one game.
All right, well, football at 4, of course, a trade happens here. Michael Carter is here. John Mechie is not. Mechie, not really a factor. I would assume Carter becomes a factor. Eagles win the deal. That's what I got there.
All right, sounds good. I'll take your word for it.
Geoff Mosher, I'm sure the team over at InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast will have more on the fit of Michael Carter in the Eagles defense. Hey, a trade during the bye week. It's a perfect bye week. The trade week, it fits right in there perfectly. The Eagles will be getting ready for the Packers. We'll talk more about that next week with Geoff Mosher here on Football at 4. Thanks, man.
You got it, Mike. Thanks.